Broadcasting to every social media platform known to mankind. We will rock and roll here in a matter of moments. We did get some questions that I will relay to the viewers and listeners. We will take the show from the top so you guys don't miss anything. This show is all about appraisers and appraisals and what they do behind the scenes that are, it's such a critical component of any deal here. We're ready to rock and roll here. Judah Wickhauer, when you're ready, let us know. Keith Smith, my friend, it's a Friday before you head out of town. We've let the viewers and listeners know you're going to be gone next week.
Unfortunately, I'm going to be up in New York for a funeral all week long, and Woody's agreed to cover me on Friday, and Ned Galloway is going to cover me on Wednesday. I don't know. He's looking. We're still good, right? Yeah. Got it.
You knew that, right?
Right. You knew that. I'm sorry I did that to you live. And Ned Galloway is going to sit in my chair on Wednesday. When I'm away, I usually do dealer's choice, so they get to pick topics and who's going to sit down. So it should be a lot of fun. But I'll be up in New York, unfortunately, for a funeral.
When are you leaving?
Monday morning. Driving my mom and dad up because I don't want my 85-year-old parents driving by themselves. So I will be chauffeuring. My father's making me wear a chauffeur hat.
You're a good son, Keith. You're a good son.
Thank you.
Judah Wickhauer, we can get going when you're ready, my friend. All right, guys, it's the Friday morning of Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us on a pollen-filled Friday morning. It's a pleasure to connect with you. We're getting a later start here with some technical difficulties, but I think Judah's indicated that we have those solved, which we're excited to connect with you. Today's program features two appraisers that need no introduction. Woody Fincham is the guy for this market in Central Virginia, Fincham and Associates. Heather Mull, it's her second rodeo here on the I Love Seville Network and on Real Talk with Keith Smith, and she is absolutely fantastic. Personally, have done some business with her with one of my properties, and she exceeded expectations, her firm, considerably. Judah Wickhauer, the director and producer. If you can go to the studio camera, and we'll welcome Keith Smith. I think we should start with some introductions, my friend.
So part two, thank you, Judah, for making some magic happen. So we're going to start with quick introductions. It's Heather Mull. You are a rock star in the commercial appraisal world, and you do a little bit of sales, which is great. And Woody Fincham, everybody knows Woody. He is the rock and roll, heavy metal fan or of appraisal in our area and around the country. So we're going to kick back in because we're going to have a hard stop today at 11:30, so we need to kick right in. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Heather, and we're going to kind of get to it right away, those of us in the retail side of the world, right, are now looking at the commercial side of the world to say, what is things going to look like post decoupling, and when now all of a sudden the MLS will not allow to have buyer compensation in it. And we do a fair amount of commercial in our shop, and me in particular, so I'm kind of used to this. So let's talk a little bit about putting your sales broker, commercial broker hat on it. What does that look like? What does a typical commercial transaction look like to you? Because you've got to look at multiple places to figure out what's available to buy.
We do, yeah. We've got, like we had talked about, a lot of stuff occurs off market. So, there is that sector that can't be ignored where it's just word of mouth or, hey, somebody has something and I know a friend that's looking for this.
I know a guy, exactly.
Every single one of our commercial deals never hit the market that I did. Not a single one of them.
Yeah.
It was all a conversation with the seller and us, and sure.
Yeah. Aside from that, you've got, your local MLS that they vary on how much is in there. I hate to quote, statistics, 10, 30% is kind of a...
It's not a huge number, though.
Yeah, it's not a big number. And then we've got, CoStar, Crexi, LoopNet, other sources. But, obviously a lot of talk about what's going to happen in the residential world with the buyer's agent and the commission. But for us in the commercial world, it's kind of just like, hey, that's
Welcome to our world.
our party. We've been used to having that commission talk from the beginning. What's the commission offered? Negotiating our commission, and in some cases, there's not a commission offered, and that's when we turn to the buyer to pay the commission, and that's we find a lot of commercial buyers are used to having that.
But you have that conversation before you start looking, right? You have that,
Absolutely.
established that relationship.
Right.
We call them buyer-broker agreements. There's really not a commercial version of that, but there are agreements that you would have with your commercial buyer that says, look, if the seller's offering, great. If it's not, then we need to work this out.
Right.
They're typically large transactions,
Right.
sophisticated buyers and
Does
sellers.
the decoupling of commissions have any impact at all with you guys, Woody and Heather?
No, not really. I mean, commissions are a cost to do business, and that's something that we normally don't really address in the appraisal portion of it. When we're doing adjustments on comparable properties, we have 5 transactional adjustments we look at, and commissions have never been considered, just like, title insurance or title fees or all the various other fees that go into it. So it's not something that really affects the appraisal side of it, at least at this point.
Same question for you, Heather.
Yeah, and I'd say probably exactly the same, probably even less of an impact in commercial, because again, there are so many that happen off market anyway. So it's really, it's pretty difficult to quantify what that's really going to have any impact.
We had comments come in on Start One here, and one of them was tied to Homes.com.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to throw that to you, Woody, the impact of Homes.com, of what you see potentially coming with real estate, if it has any impact at all.
Well, I don't really know the context of what you're asking, so
So Homes.com is becoming, you talked about
Yeah.
this in Richmond Market. You
Yeah.
did a transaction, sans MLS altogether.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Homes.com is becoming the 10-ton elephant as far as the portal goes, our public-facing portal. Actually bringing later in May on 2 executives from Homes.com to talk about it. They're never going to get, at least according to them, never get into the MLS space. But in Richmond, I'm doing 4 new construction transactions that I just used Homes.com, made much like you and I would do for a commercial transaction.
Homes.com being owned by CoStar.
CoStar.
Exactly.
We'll
Right.
just throw that in.
And actually, a little news, they just bought Matterport out for
I saw that the other day.
Over $1 billion.
$1.2 billion.
Yeah.
I just saw that.
oh, that explains why their fees are so high.
No comment.
Sorry, CoStar.
Well, I mean, one thing I'm noticing
Go back to my
is
mirror here.
Homes.com and their parent company seems to be utilizing a strategy that is customer focused. Where I'm seeing with, say, the Realtor app, seeing a strategy that is agent focused.
So I'm actually going to push back on that.
Okay.
It's actually agent focused.
Which one?
Homes.com. And the thing is they're doing it concurrently. I've sat down and had long discussions with them. They're doing it concurrently. They're being more transparent with information in the public thing. But here's the difference between Homes.com and let's call it Zillow, and I'll probably get myself into trouble for doing that. So if I'm a listing agent and I'm a preferred agent, or I pay for the Homes.com, when my listing is out in the world and you two guys want to get information on it, I get the information directly. In Zillow, it goes out to all the people that pay for the zip code.
Right.
So their focus is going to be very much so agent focused
Gotcha.
on the back side of it. The front side of it is definitively client focused, customer
focused.
focused. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I'm doing 4 transactions. I pulled it up. I called the agent directly, just like the conversation I'm trying to have about commercial. Tell me what your builder is offering. How does it work? Yada, yada, yada. And those transactions will never show up in my MLS because they're
Interesting.
never going to hit my local MLS on that.
I find it interesting, and I find them. I have this question for you: when does Homes.com and CoStar and everything that they're purchasing, Matterport's another example, start becoming antitrust? That's something.
I mean, you could ask that question of CoreLogic. CoreLogic owns more real estate-related data than I think anyone. I mean, they're a huge juggernaut. They own Marshall & Swift, the cost service. Most MLSs now are owned by, or have the backbone of their systems are run by that. CRS and all the various other things. I mean, I don't know the FTC even looks at the real estate space anymore. I mean, they obviously are looking on the commission stuff, but they're not, they're allowing these juggernauts to, it's an oligopoly out there. It's not a competitive market space whatsoever. And that's why the fees are so outrageous. It's very expensive to have access to all of the information we need.
I'll tell you, Homes.com's agent fee is relatively inexpensive.
Right now.
That's correct.
Until they corner the market.
Yeah.
Totally.
They're no dummies.
No, they're no. You laughed right
I
there.
laugh
can't wait
because
to-
you're not the first one that has said that comment that I've heard. I've heard others.
You take a loss
Say
lead.
that
I mean,
too.
it's basic, business. I mean, you lose a little bit at first, and then you make it up in the back end.
But here's the difference. They're not setting prices. Homes.com is not setting, you can't charge more than this, you can't charge more. That's what ultimately got NAR into trouble, right? That back end of it. And let's be clear, NAR never said that, right? But, the reality of it is...
It could have been more transparent.
That's the problem.
Could have been more communicative.
Transparency. I mean, we talked about this on Wednesday. I'm holding in my hand. NAR pulled off its website how you can track the number of agents come on and off. Look, I'm sure there's some reason behind it. It sure as hell ain't transparent. So to do that. But I do want to stay a little bit for the agents that are watching it, to talk a little bit about how a commercial transaction actually happens, because I think that's what we're going to see come July, right? So if I have a buyer and you have a listing and it's not in the MLS, you're not on CoStar, right? I pick up the phone and call up Heather. I'm doing this right now with a couple of local commercial agents and say, what do you got? I've got this client. And what's the next step after that?
Well, once you find out what they have, and hey, I have somebody interested in this. Probably my next question after, hey, how can we look at it? Is it available? Is there a tenant in? How can we get access? And what is the commission split that's being offered? Is there a commission split being offered? Is there as me representing the buyer? I will say the one thing I think that is, and again, I don't do residential unless it's my own stuff, and even then I usually will a lot of times get a representation because I try to stay
for you.
where.
Good for you.
I'm
Good
a
for you.
I tell other agents that I'm like, I'm licensed to do it. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it.
Hire a pro.
Right. But I think, a lot of the difference is that in commercial, they are probably it's going to require more money down. So a lot of commercial buyers are more in a position to be able to pay the buyer's agent if that comes up, as opposed to residential, first-time home buyers, VA buyers, FHA. These are, I understand, it's going to be a harder conversation for the buyer's agent of residential in a lot of sectors than the commercial.
So Woody, why is that? Why do we as a residential industry struggle with talking about money and how we get paid? I don't understand that.
Well, I mean, go back to 2008, 2009. I mean,
No.
the precipice that we were on.
No.
Let's never really go back there.
No.
It was hard times for a lot of us, myself included. But I mean, let's look at it. I mean, residential is the way it's been put together over the last several decades is that a lot of times buyers don't have the ability to pay commissions, or they've saved up everything they have to put a down payment on. If they're going FHA, it's 3.5%, right? So they're really not in a position where they can do it. So it matters a lot on that side of it. But however, if you look at 2008, the mortgage companies were ill prepared for what happened. All the lenders out there, all the secondary investors, they had themselves in a lot of situations where they were upside down. There was negative equity in the property that they were taking back, and it was just a huge loss for the entire economy. I mean, it created a lot of problems. On the commercial side, folks are, they have the ability, they have to be well qualified to do what they're doing, or they're not going to get the loans.
There was a substantial change in our industry from 2000. I had a 2008 to the time of great unpleasantness. I actually had a phone call yesterday from a very reputable architect in Charlottesville that has a custom build for a client at Lake Monticello. You know, waterfront, substantial project. Can't find anybody to build it. And he says,
Wow.
you wouldn't want to do it. I said, nope. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's scary that they want to build a design to build in Lake Monticello. That's going to
Brother,
be.
I did tons of those.
Oh, I know,
Tons
but
of
they
those,
tend to be a little bit of a super adequacy in that market.
I think
Why is that scary? Because price point doesn't justify?
Well, usually your ROI on it's going to take you about 20 years to get equal to the market if you overdo it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's nice if you can afford to put all the things into a home like that you want to, but in the end, will the market absorb it when you need to resell it? And I don't know that people think that through. You know, it's like I'm going to be here for the next 20 years, and then they get they find
Yeah.
out in 2 years they got to move.
unless,
So, yeah.
because I'd ask some questions,
Uh-huh.
unless it's a second home, cash, I want something on the waterfront and don't care.
Yeah.
And that's what this
That
this,
does happen,
yeah,
for
that's
sure.
what this is.
What's the top transaction you've seen at Lake Monticello? That's a good question for both you guys.
Oh, God.
Oh, I know it's over $1 million.
I've done a few that valued over $1 million, but I don't recall what the absolute highest was.
Well, we're going to let Heather share some of her wonderful thoughts, and I will tell you what the highest sale at Lake Monticello.
Heather, I'll throw this to you here.
I said, I don't do residential,
I know
y'all
you
are the
don't.
Lake Monticello.
I know you don't. What sector of your business is most hopping right now?
I would say it's still industrial warehouse.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I'm looking at I was just pulling up the NAR's third quarter. I just haven't pulled up CoStar yet, but happened to be, I was searching through CCIM and the NAR first quarter, I'm thinking third month, March, first quarter report came up with areas with the strongest 12-month absorption, and this is nationwide. Nationwide, Richmond is 8th on the list for industrial strongest absorption. And we're seeing, I had one that I'm doing now that I listed, and man, we were just multiple showings, multiple offers on industrial warehouse.
I just did a rather large Class A medical in Richmond, substantial project, same situation.
Yeah.
I was representing the buyer on that. To buy it, and we were competing against multiple offers. This is a large 6-story facility, and it kind of blew my mind, and it was interesting. It almost fell apart, believe it or not, over $5,000 worth of office furniture. Could you believe that?
I
Have you
would,
ever
because
had
I've
that
been there on one.
Has that ever happened to you before?
We had one that almost fell apart. It was actually a flex property over office chairs. And that's when you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I'll just buy the office chairs.
I literally wrote a check and said, here you go.
Yeah.
And let's close that.
The
Been there.
Richmond market is exploding.
It is.
That's your market, right?
Yeah, I'm in Richmond.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, and I say industrial's top of everybody's. Retail's still doing good, and there's some there's always, and even going outside of Richmond, there's always some more specialty stuff. I mean, self-storage is still doing good. Mobile home parks still have a lot of investors looking. Retail, multifamily still, even though there's
Really?
back and forth with are the rents going to maybe tick down a little bit, or maybe even not tick down, but not go up as fast. Still in demand.
Don't you think we're overbuilding that multifamily market?
Possibly, but so far it's been if you build it,
We
they
do
will
this
come, but
as an industry, right? We
Yes.
stuff that's hot, we start overbuilding it, right? Then all
We
of a
do.
sudden we overbuild it, and it kind of drops back out. You see that from an appraisal perspective. from
Oh,
time to time.
absolutely. I mean, the pendulum's always swinging. And when you're right in the middle of, like when we're doing market analysis, you never really know exactly what's going on right now. You can see what's happening, and you can kind of project to what's going to happen. But the forest for the trees kind of gets involved when you're at the present. It's kind of neat.
We're still having a lot of people coming down from Northern Virginia, where we're seeing that's the one thing that we know how this works with economic supply and demand, but we're still just steady getting more demand in these areas, Richmond, and in the rural areas, especially post-COVID with places getting high-speed internet. We're doing a ton of stuff in rural areas, appraisal-wise. I know I am. I know you are too.
Why is that?
Most of my business.
So many more, the presence of high-speed internet, and I can think personally, because my husband and I are looking at going a little more rural. We now that the kids are older and getting out, and we have 5 dogs, so we need like less house and more land, but it's also,
Did you say 5 dogs?
yes. I know, my husband's like.
Joseph
it's like-
Gentile watching the show.
it's like
Joe,
we're-
how's it
we're-
going?
we're
Brother from
collecting
another
dogs.
mother.
But people can work from home. That, post-COVID, they're finding that rural is more affordable, obviously, but that's starting to go up in price. And, from a commercial perspective, more rural markets have kind of been overlooked for many, many decades. The rents haven't been going up, and investors are finding, hey, I can go in this rural market, raise rents, make money. And I know there's all kinds of,
Is that mostly
social implications about that. Should they be raising rents? Not
Sure.
really getting that. I'm just saying
Sure.
from an investor's perspective, they're seeing a lot of opportunities in these traditionally overlooked areas where people are now starting to go to.
So back on Lake Monticello.
Yeah?
So I did the total sales as far as our MLS would go back. So that's 5,713 sales. There were 2 that were over $1 million. It was on 3/10/23. There was one for 1,190,000, and then on 11/29/23 there was a 1,150,000, and then there was 4 that had a 9 in front of it. And then it starts dropping from that point.
You got 2 over $1 million?
2 over $1 million.
Lake Monticello?
2 waterfront
Both
properties.
waterfront, right?
2 waterfront.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
would.
the one at 1.25 was an amazingly different kind of property. It's just a big sprawling house that goes down on the main, it's on the main lake too, so. beautiful
Yeah, so
property.
it actually went up. The list price was I read the list
Yeah.
price, thank you, Woody, was 1,190,000. It actually sold for 1,250,000.
And give some props out to Vicky too. Vicky Wilson had both of those listings.
And she made it happen.
Yeah.
Good job, Vicki Wilson. I'll throw this to Heather. Walk us through the appraisal process of storage. Is it based occupancy? Is it based on land value? Is it based on zoning potential? Just give us the broad strokes of that.
So you talking about like warehouse space or self-storage?
Self-storage.
Self-storage?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's going to come. Investors want cash flow. That's what it's coming down to. How much can I maximize a site? How many units can I get on there? Cost and time to build. But then it's going to come to what are the rents doing? Are they going up? And it's hitting that. Investors probably not going to come out necessarily spend all that money to buy, just to build 5 units or 10 units. But there's going to be a break-even point where, hey, it's worth doing 50, 100, 200 units. And there's a demand in the area, competition. But in the end of the day, what can I build it for? What can I rent it for? What are my expenses and what's my profit at the
How
end?
about existing self-storage that's already on market,
Yep.
that's already been constructed? How much do you consider the fact that you have units that are empty? How much do you consider maybe you don't consider this, the brand position, where maybe this doesn't have a website, signage, digital,
Right.
any of that stuff, where it's underachieving or underperforming?
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's what a lot of what investors are looking for too, is where's my what we call value add? If
Yeah.
it's underperforming, is it underperforming because there's too much competition? Or what we see a lot in existing, I'm not saying all it's about a lot, is it's just underperforming because there's somebody that's owned it for a long time.
That's coasting.
They're trying to self-manage, but they don't quite know how to compete. They don't have the internet presence, and then an investor will come in and say, hey, I can do the marketing, the website, I can manage it better, and I can get it leased up to where it should be.
I have they're not local, but I have 2 clients looking for cube storage space in Charlottesville and a Hilton. And the dirt is just too expensive. The acquisition of the land, because both of them need about 2 acres to work. Right? You can get a cube to work for maybe about 1.5 acres. A Hilton, like Garden Inn or something like that, needs 2 acres.
Right.
And they all, of course, all want to be close to the UVA. They all want to be. It's just the opportunity is just not there. We have them out in Zion's Crossroads.
Right.
Right. We may have them out to your conversation in Goochland
Yep.
and stuff like that. But the numbers don't start working.
And you all do tend to be at a higher price point in land, obviously, than we do over in Richmond. But we're starting, we're seeing that coming up. And that's what, again, that kind of rural sprawl we're seeing. Interesting with hospitality, I'm also seeing a lot of the builders are taking and they're doing two, they're trying to get a little bit bigger of a site and do two of their hotels, you know, same brand, side by side, to kind of get a little more economies of scale when they're developing.
This question's coming from John, how do you say his last name, Woody? Copulus?
John, we could just call him Cope.
John Cope, he says, Woody, that 1.2 at Lake Monticello, what was it worth in 2019 pre-COVID?
Oh gosh, I mean, it was not worth that much for sure. COVID really, you know, it was steroids for our market, like it was in a lot of places around the country. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think we'd seen much go for more than $750,000 or so.
Well, that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to say is, so the next highest sale. So anything that had a 9 in front of it was October 22 through March of 23. So all post-COVID.
785 is the highest I see in 19, right? No, I'm sorry. In 17, there was an 870 sale.
More questions coming in if you want. Go ahead, Woody.
Yeah, I mean, Lake Monticello, I mean, when
830 was in 12/10 closed anyway. Closed 10/2020. That was the highest, and then after that it starts jumping, you know, in the 22, 23, 24 range. But the number's so small, right?
Yeah.
The median over the whole length of this time of 5,713, the median sales price is $219.
Yeah. Well, that's also going to have a lot of outliers too, because Lake Monticello was hit really hard during the
You think?
During 2007, 2008 period. There were a lot of foreclosures in there.
Has your industry seen, and you know, you guys are the best at what you guys do, so market share is on your side here. Has your industry seen a replenish of new blood or younger blood into the profession? Because we're seeing with the realtor profession, the average age in the realtor profession is what, 59, 58?
I think it's 57.
57?
I mean,
We probably both can answer that, but
this
you
is
go
a
ahead.
Big question, and we are concerned about this.
Yeah.
And he's a teacher, he's a professor. He teaches this.
She's the professor. I teach some appraisal classes. Heather's an adjunct at VCU.
I am. It's been a few years since I've taught, but I was teaching it as young.
I mean, I do some teaching for the Appraisal Institute and a couple of other entities for CE and QE. But anyway, to answer your question, there's not enough people coming into the profession. Licensing became a thing in 1991, 92, and a lot of the people that were credentialed at that point in time are now getting to the point where they're retiring or otherwise not going to be appraising anymore, and we're not getting enough folks into the profession. There's hardly any undergrad programs anywhere in the United States for valuation. Like VCU and a few other universities do have a master's program, but they are concentrating mostly on commercial and development, and that they're not really looking at the residential space as something. It's just not on anybody's. I mean, my kid, who grew up as an appraiser's kid, swore forever he would never do it. Now he's my business partner and a certified residential appraiser, and a great appraiser at that. I'm not just saying that because he's my kid, but in the end, I mean, it's just not a sexy profession. I mean, you don't think about it. You probably have heard your parents talk about it, but you're not going to come out at 22, 23 years old out of college, and you know you've got $150,000 in student loan debt, and you're looking at this profession that you've got to get into, that you got to spend 2 years as a mentee and you might make $50,000 or $60,000 if you're at a good firm.
I'm going to ask a question that is going to get me in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah.
I hope Yona's not watching because I might get fired. So, do you think it's a good idea that our profession follows that same model? That if you want to be a real estate agent, and I'm going to piss a lot of agents off by saying that you have to go through some sort of apprenticeship program? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, for a mercantile economy from the 1800s, I think apprenticeships are a good idea. But I mean, I look at the law profession, you know, I mean, you got folks that as soon as they pass the bar, they're able to hang a shingle out.
I know engineers can't do that.
Right.
They have to do ENTs, right?
Right.
Engineers in training for quite a while before they're allowed to get to get turned
But you
loose.
compare it to passing the bar, law school is 2 years. So you can make an argument, that's the apprenticeship.
It's an advanced degree for sure. And if you're going to be really effective in law, you're going to go clerk for, a judge somewhere, or you get to a law firm where you can actually get some practical experience.
Someone could steamroll through the Mosley online school in less than a week. And then they could do it on Mosley on a Monday morning and then go take the test the next week and pass.
That's a problem. I mean, you're not going to have the ability. I mean, if you're going to become a realtor, you have to, meet Code of Ethics number 11, which says that you are competent to do the work. If you've just done a week's worth of education, then you're really not doing what you need to do. But what a professional should be doing in that situation is partnering up and working with a firm. On the residential appraisal side of things, there's no advantage to working in firms anymore, because the appraisal management companies and the lenders out there have really compressed fees down, and they've done it intentionally because they're making money off of what the appraisers are doing. And so they've basically broken up the ability for firms to exist in the residential space. It's just not lucrative. And until we get an undergrad program out there at a few of the universities around the country, I really just don't see it changing much. And it's scary. I mean, the best answer, and Heather's on the board of directors for the Appraisal Institute at the national level, but, and I'll mention one of my mentors, Sandy Adamatis, who's the president of the Institute this year. She was instrumental in developing PARIA, and PARIA is a practical a program that allows appraisers who can't otherwise find mentorship to actually get in, and they can get certified residential through 2 modules worth of work. It takes about 2 years to do, but they're able to, come out of that as a competent appraiser. That just started last fall, and we've got, I don't know, how many members do we have in it now?
Is it 100?
It's more than 100 now.
I think 100.
Yeah. It's a good step, but I mean, the Appraisal Institute's the only entity out there doing it right now that have successfully completed it. So that is an alternative for folks to go into, but it's not cheap. I mean, they do have a lot of scholarship and grant money available for folks that want to do it, but I mean, it's several $1,000s to get through that.
Heather, you're eager to jump in here.
I was going to jump in and just say one thing that, I guess, one of the core differences in being a sales agent, being an appraiser, is you can take the test, you can become a sales agent after the test in the 60 hour,
60
class.
hours, yep.
But let's remember, you can't hang your own license. You're still
exactly right.
required
That's
to work
exactly right.
under a broker. You can't, hang your own, I'm sorry, I said license, but hang your own business license and start your own firm until you're a broker, which takes 3 years. 3 years active. I should know, so I have mine. And then you can start. So to own your own brokerage, there kind of is an apprenticeship built
there is.
in. And, technically, when you are a salesperson, you're working underneth your broker.
Absolutely.
So your
Thank you for
broker
clarifying
is taking responsibility for everything you did. And we could talk for an hour about how well that may or may not be working.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some brokerages, especially some of these online ones, where the broker's not even in the market.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
That was happening in the appraisal business for a long time
Yeah.
too, where they would say they have trainees, is what we call the new folks into the appraisal business, and there would be there was a guy in Bedford, Virginia, that had over 200 trainees at one point. It was being abused big time.
I mean, I won't highlight which ones, but I think that's happening.
So Heather, thank you for pointing that out, because that is an important distinction, right? You
Right.
have to hang it on to your point, is it being managed or not is a whole different
Right.
animal. And I think I've been on the record saying this decoupling is a really good thing for our industry. I think it's a good thing for our industry, a good thing for the public. We're going to have a lot of transparency going through forward. We're going to start building our value proposition. I think ultimately this on the back end is going to be a very good thing for the industry and those of us who stay in. Back to where I think this is going to be very much like our commercial transactions, and I've been saying this on the show for a while, you're 100% right. You've got to demonstrate your value proposition to your buyer. You've got to go ahead and be transparent on how you get paid and do that. And then you've got to do our number one thing that we do the best, which is negotiate. And if I can't negotiate for how I get paid, how am I going to negotiate for your money, right? So, if those are out there that are wondering what this is going to really look like, you need to start talking to some commercial folks and picking their brain, because that's what this is going to look like.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I've always been a big proponent of, I think that residential and commercial should talk more for, a multitude of reasons, but, I think we can learn a lot from
Well, the
each
big
other.
difference on the commercial business you do, you're not required to become a realtor.
Correct.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Right?
And
a lot
it-
of them are not.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was on a Facebook blog the other day group, and I was watching the conversations with all residential agents, and I think that's a good thing. That's a good point. That's not understood a lot. There's some out there that think that commercial agents can't be realtors. They can.
Does, of course.
And then there's some that say, well, they just call commercial realtors. Well, some are not. So yeah, they do not have to be realtors. Some
Well, your
are, some
regular
aren't.
real estate license that you acquire from the state, that you hang underneath a brokerage, there's no differentiating between a commercial real estate license
Right.
and a residential. I, as a resident, there is a real estate license, period. I can
Correct.
do anything from that. Now, I can reach into my pocket and pull up my Class A general contractor's
Right.
license, that I have one for residential, I have one for commercial, I have one for plumbing, I have all these different licenses that I've acquired over the years. But
And appraisers too. We have commercial, we have residential. Same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, we have different licenses for appraisers.
but not in the real estate.
Correct.
This
industry.
is from Danville, Travis Hackworth. I wonder what Heather, Keith, and Woody see as the future of mixed-use developments going forward in the next couple of years. Major cities are quickly running out of available property or affordable property. Does this squeeze in the major metros of the state present more opportunity for smaller cities in the state, or will the market just drop in that arena all the way around? He's asking because he's in Danville.
That's a big question.
There's a lot of parts of that question.
I think mixed use is definitely going to be here for a while. I mean, it's definitely a portion of the market's definitely going to stay there and grow there. I mean, Charlottesville is kind of a smaller market as well. With the upzoning here, I mean, we're going to see, I think, some mixed use coming from that. We just haven't seen anything that's directly absorbed in the market yet. I think that would reflect that. But if I had to, my crystal ball, I would say, yeah, I think,
want one?
yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
But I don't know. Keith and Heather probably have a better
Well,
opinion on this than I do.
I think it also has to do, it goes to a lot of the government and how fast the zoning is going, and how open the zoning in your governmental jurisdictions are going to be open to it.
25% of all new construction is regulatory expenses.
Yeah.
I believe it.
And that is no different in the commercial world.
Yep.
So that has, it's just exploded over the decades. Back to mixed use. I've said this I was speaking at a via Zoom panel at a convention last week. What is old is new again. Mixed use was around. It was the thing that everybody did. Mm-hmm. Then it became the Levitowns of the world, right? The sprawl. Yeah. And now mixed use is back. It was for different reasons. Back in the day, you didn't hop in your car and drive out. You took your buggy or you took a tram or whatever, right?
Showing your age there, buddy.
I'm making this up as I go. Be careful. Now it's because of expenses, right?
Yeah.
And you have to put your density together to make things somewhat cost effective. But I did the acres at Lake Monticello. I tell the story all the time. 150 acres, central water and sewer, VDOT roads, yada, yada, yada. By the time I acquired it, got it rezoned, got a site plan, and put a bulldozer on the job site, it took 6 months. I'm helping consulting people on projects that are in my 6th, 7th, and 8th year, and we haven't even put a bulldozer on the job site yet. That is driving
Time
costs.
is money.
It is.
And folks don't realize that. I mean, government is hurting trade, basically, because, if you add, it takes 6 years to develop something, and that just seems silly to me.
No, that's just to get past the zoning and the approvals.
Well, Colonial Place took what?
6 years.
Yeah, that's
Took
crazy.
6 years.
And they're still not,
We're still in the development phase. They're still in the development phase.
I drive
Go
by
ahead
it every
and do
day.
that.
And
This
that
question's come
lovely
on the
water
feed.
tank.
Based on what we were talking about, is there an appraisal degree track at four-year colleges, and who's doing it?
There are some real estate programs for undergrad, but I don't think anything that's specific to appraisal. I think all the programs go through valuation, and they spend some time on development. They spend some time on the various other things that go into it. I don't think you get into actual valuation specifics other than maybe a class or two until you get to an advanced degree. And most of those programs are really not designed for residential. They're really designed more for the commercial side of stuff, which is, as a residential appraiser, I take a little bit of a affront to that because, residential is a specialization that, not everybody can do it. I know commercial appraisers and certified general appraisers, they call me all the time for guidance on residential because they'll get an assignment that, they've just never done residential and they don't understand it the way that they should. And then there are other certified generals that they're great at it, but, it's definitely a facet and a nuance that a lot of people they don't understand it.
I know VCU has a bachelor's degree in real estate.
But it's commercial. That's
Correct, yes.
Yep.
And they have a master's in real estate valuation specifically, but yes, it is. And part of that is to get a commercial license or commercial real estate appraiser license, you have to have a 4-year degree. Whether that changes in the future, I don't know.
Right.
But that's also part of it. I actually had some.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you do. Part of it is also because I have had conversations with like VCU, and I know that Virginia Tech is in the process of building their real estate program. ODU has George
UVA has
Mason.
one at Darden, but it's very much so commercial focused.
Right.
And multifamily focused.
Part of this, and this was years ago, I was told, is also because their business department. Some of this is the core curriculum that is told to them that they have to teach. To be accredited in their business department, and a lot of that has core classes like finance and things that you're going to see more in commercial. So it's kind of what's handed down to them that you have to have these as part of and it just kind of steers more towards that commercial.
Nationwide, we are in my opinion, and not just my opinion, whoever you read, a crisis of inventory. Right? We're in a crisis across the country. What I don't understand is why we don't have some universities and higher learning institutes trying to work together to help the knowledge level. A lot of this is, I've been doing this for 35 years, so, I kind of got a kindergarten degree.
Well, it's
on
interesting that you say it as we wind down here. It's not just realtors that are short. Staff or the industry is down. It's also appraisers. We talk plumbers. We talk tradespeoples. I don't understand what's going on with maybe the upcoming generation, and maybe this is me. I walk 10 miles in snow to get uphill.
One way, both ways.
Plumbers, electricians, realtors, appraisers. What are people doing for work?
We spent decades focusing on making our children go to universities to become middle management, and what's happening now in corporate America with middle management, they're shedding them. There's too many people doing it. How many waiters and waitresses out there have an MBA that they can't find a job doing that with? There's nothing that's not honorable about trades. You plumbers and carpenters and all of that. My father was a builder.
Try to hire one.
I know it's impossible.
Auto mechanics, I hear from their sector too.
Yeah.
Any trades, and
I tell this story
make
all
some
the
good
time,
money
and we've got to wrap up with a hard stop here in a few minutes. My little brother is in Richmond. When I went in the Marine Corps at 18, he was 3 months old. Didn't see him for 6 years, so he's really my little brother.
Is his nickname Oops?
Sorry. No, I think that was me. They named me Oops.
I was an Oops baby.
They named me Oops, and they tried 4 other kids to try to get it better. It just never worked. And by the way, I'm driving them up for 12 hours up to New York, depending on traffic. I'm going to hear this because my mother watches this, and I'm going to hear that comment for 12 hours driving up. But he's a high-end trim carpenter in Richmond. I call him Doctor.
Yeah.
And you put the numbers together in your head on how much he does, right? And is booked out forever.
Well, if you're good at something, don't do it for cheap.
Amen, brother. All set.
Well, and rallying it back around to the decoupling, I've been very connected with the Pacific Northwest for years with my affordable housing work that I do, and the conversations I'm having with agents out there, because they decoupled in 2022, the people that are really good are actually charging more than everybody else. The people that aren't making as much.
I think that, if you're a residential agent and broker, that's where you're specializing in, get people like Heather, take them to lunch, get them a drink,
There you go.
and talk to them about it. Because, you're salespeople, right? I think it's incumbent upon you now to be really good at selling what you bring to the table. What are you doing for your clients to make them want to use you? And I just think that's the evolution we're seeing right now.
One last thing, and we'll wrap up around this. All your commercial contracts buried in the contract is how everybody gets paid, correct?
Yes.
There is not a single commercial contract that does not talk about buyer's agents getting this, seller's agents getting this, and how it's going to get paid. That's the next step. It is going to have to be buried into the contract, because otherwise, how are you going to get paid?
Right. Or it might say, this references an additional document.
Yeah.
But it is, yes.
In the total contract docs. So those realtors out there that are watching this live or down the road,
Get ready to do that.
do yourself a favor, to Woody's point. If you don't want to talk to local folks, give Heather a phone call, say how the hell you do this, and she'll tell you.
I'll try and help the best I can.
Heather Mole is fantastic. Woody Fitcham's fantastic. Keith Smith as well. Judah Wickhauer, guys, also does an excellent job behind the scenes. This is Real Talk with Keith Smith, where it's archived online at realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. Thank you kindly for joining us on the Friday edition of the program. The I Love Seaville show is up in approximately 1 hour. So long, everybody. Excellent work. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.